Hello and welcome to today's video. My name's Haley and we're continuing on with the sixth gene key within the series about all of the gene keys written by Richard Rudd. The sixth gene key is titled The Path to Peace. And as per usual, there are 3 sections to this key. Today we'll be going over the shadow state of conflict. In future videos, we'll move into the gift of diplomacy. And finally, we will wrap it up with the city state of peace. Today, we'll be focusing on conflict, which is quite a broad topic. And I was really intrigued when I saw the name of this shadow state, because I feel to try to put it into a few pages is quite the endeavor. So I was really curious about what Richard Rudd had to say about this, even before I dived in. And he titles this chapter, Conflict, the Battle of the Sexes, which also threw me for a loop. It's like, oh, okay, Battle of the Sexes. I didn't see that coming. And he starts off by opening this with talking about how this 6th shadow of conflict is the most influential gene key in regards to the issue of human communication. Also a bold statement. This means that if we are to move out of this shadow of conflict and find ourselves embodied in the gift of diplomacy or the civic state of peace, that all human communication would be fluid, loving, and would translate to the rest of our world. So, big statement there. All of our human communication issues are due to conflict. Meaning, once again, if we correct ourselves from the shadow state, we end all human conflict, literally all human conflict, and we move into peace on earth, heaven on earth. And he starts by describing what conflict is. He says, conflict stems from the human emotional system and our inability to handle the voltage of extreme emotional states. Right? Conflict can only arise when I feel so much grief or so much anger or so much impatience that I feel the need to act on it. And I actually, ironically enough, can't feel into it, sit with it, and be with it. I allow this shadow frequency to move me. It's this inability to handle the voltage of extreme emotional states. Once again, if I could handle it, to handle would be I could sit here and hold this emotional state as it arises in me. But because we as humans can't do this too often, it moves us in ways that we would not naturally move out of a state of love and peace. He then goes on to further describe specifically conflict can only occur when 2 or more people agree to identify with their emotional state. And I thought that was really beautiful that he pointed that out, because it reminded me of a time where, as I was trying to build my own awareness, I caught myself in a conversation that most definitely could have moved into an argument or a conflict, but because in that scenario I was very aware, oh wow, I feel reactive, oh wow, I feel triggered, I was able to hold my tongue. It was not easy, let me just put that out there, but I was able to hold my tongue, and sure enough, this person that's barking at me, if there's no one barking back at them, if I'm not reacting, there's no fuel being added to the fire, and eventually the fire dies down. And it's also made me think about how in other times when, for instance, my mom and I are in an argument and I don't have the self-regulation and control to hold my tongue, I start barking back at her. Does it take 2 to create conflict? Fuel on fire, on fire, on fuel, and it breaks out. And so it is in direct correlation to either 2 or more people's agreement to identify with their emotional state and allow that low vibration to move them in ways that they would not normally react. So within this sentence actually reveals a beautiful gift of how to escape conflict, which is to stop identifying with your emotional state and rise above it. Whether that looks viscerally like you holding your tongue and not saying the atrocious thoughts coming into your head, or whether that looks like you saying very calmly, you know, I'm gonna go take some space because I can feel some things bubbling up inside of me. I can feel the surgence of emotional energy wanting to move me in ways that I know are not loving to myself or you. So I'm gonna take a pause and go over there and handle my emotional state. So awareness of this extreme emotional state and voltage within you, and choosing of your own free will to handle it in a way that's constructive, is how we escape conflict. And he says here that as long as you surrender your will to the emotional system, then you will be trapped by its volatile nature. Okay, so what does it mean to surrender your will? I thought about that. Okay, your will, your third energy center or chakra, if you use that terminology. Willpower, I think of your power, your energy source, your life force energy, the strength you need to be endowed with in order to take action in the world. So as long as you keep surrendering your will, your power, your actions to your emotional system, you will be trapped by its volatile nature. Of course, if you keep feeding your power and your energy towards your emotions, your low vibrational emotions, they will, of course, use that energy and that power to create destruction. And vice versa, right? If you stop surrendering your will to your emotional state, to your feeling of sadness, or to your feeling of anger, or to your feeling of impatience, and you say, actually, I'm going to stop feeding this. I see this for what it is. I see that I'm upset, and I'm going to choose to handle this in a different way. Now that's being drained of energy, and eventually it will die out. So I'm starting to think of low vibrational states, once again, whether it's grief, apathy, shame, guilt, impatience, aggravation, annoyance, I could go on. Any of these lower vibrational states, which on the map of consciousness that I've referenced before, coined by David R. Hawkins, anything under the frequency of 200, considered low vibrational. All of these states need to be fed in order to keep going, need fuel to keep creating a fire, need two to tango. They, of their own volition, have no volition, which is interesting. Interesting. I gotta start saying a different word, which is intriguing. Because that means if I choose to stop feeding it, it will inevitably die out. He says that this sixth shadow is about the loss of balance in the world at large. Conflict is a result of loss of balance. Conflict is not natural. We are out of homeostasis as a collective when we choose to engage in conflict. And just look around. Conflict is everywhere. On a large scale, as seen through war, and on a small scale, as seen through your own relationship issues with friends, family, and romantic partners. And he starts to tie this back into the name of the chapter, which is Conflict, the Battle of the Sexes. And he says that in particular, there's an imbalance between the male and the female energies. And it's become this battle of the sexes, he says. And he says how this disparity of energies leaks into more than just physical sexes. It also bleeds into religion, science, the East and the West, the rich and the poor. And wherever there is conflict, you can bet that underneath that there's an imbalance of feminine and masculine energy. And I think it's just important to note here, if you haven't looked into feminine or masculine energy, just because I, for example, am a woman does not mean I'm only feminine energy. I hold both energies. And the amount of illness being displayed can show my audience how balanced I am within my own feminine and masculine energies. Same thing with a man. Just because he's a man doesn't mean he's only masculine energy. And if he is, then it'll be quite obvious, because it will be this kind of off-putting overcompensation of masculine energy with no femininity to balance it out, and it will come off as repulsive, for lack of better words. So essentially, the more attractive and balanced something is, the more attractive something is, the more balanced it is, and vice versa. The more unbalanced, the more ill, the more unattractive. This goes for people, places, things, at a collective level and on an individual level. And so once again, he ties this back to social imbalances. This imbalance of masculine and feminine energy creates corruption, creates war within myself, within my relationships, and within the world at large. Yeah. I felt like that was a lot. Just like a lot of bad news. Nonetheless, news that I need to read and that we need to be aware of, right? How can we all get out of this shadow of conflict without being willing to really sit down and adequately comprehend and assess the current state of being that we are at as a collective and as an individual? So a quick contemplation here for you watching is, where am I imbalanced? Once again, you'll know you're imbalanced within a certain aspect of your life because there will be a repulsion. It won't be attractive. It will be ill in health. There will not be a sense of balance and ease. It'll be the opposite. You'll feel kind of off, confused, weird. So ask yourself, where is that kind of energy surfacing? Whether it's with you in your relationship with yourself mentally, your own physical health, a relationship with a certain person you have, or maybe even a relationship with a certain place. For instance, say you walk into airports and immediately you start to feel anxious. That means your relationship with the airport, for whatever reason, causes imbalance, causes dis-ease, disharmony. So one thing to note here is you're in relationship with everything in your life. Whether that relationship is good or bad is up to you. Nonetheless, you are still in relationship with everything. I am in relationship with the gene keys. I am in relationship with my house. I'm in relationship with the people who watch my YouTube videos. I'm in relationship with my guitar. I could go on, right? And then the more obvious things, I'm in a relationship with my mother. I'm in a relationship with my boyfriend that doesn't exist. I'm in a relationship with my neighbor. I'm in a relationship with my best friend. So some relationships are more obvious than others, but it's really important here to brainstorm all of relationships, whether they surface as people, as physical places, countries, as things and items or foods or drinks. What's your relationship like with alcohol or weed? Or what's your relationship like with croissants? I just had one. Our relationship is doing amazing, super buttery. So yes, ask yourself, where do you sense imbalance within your relationships? And the nice thing about this question is it's up to you watching, you who is watching, how far you want to dive. This is a never-ending contemplation, right? I just literally told you you're in relationship with everything. So you could quite literally answer this question for the rest of eternity. Or you could pick a few key items that stick out to you and really deep dive on those. Up to your own discretion. This shadow manifests through your emotional state. He says, if you've ever experienced shame, guilt, or abuse, the entire culture within your being has been disturbed. Okay, so who here that is watching has ever experienced shame, guilt, or abuse? Abuse meaning mental, physical, or emotional. I can guarantee anyone who's watching this video has experienced shame at some point or another, guilt at some point or another, or any form of abuse. And Richard Rudd says that if you have experienced any of these three states, that the entire culture within your being has been disturbed. That's a fancy way to say that your entire body has been affected. The chemistry of your body has been affected by these feelings. The body follows suit of the mind. That's a quote I love by I don't know who, but it's something I always remind myself, which is the body is taking instructions from the way you think. So if you've ever had guilty thoughts or feelings, shameful thoughts or feelings, or abuse surface, then you can bet that your body has been completely affected by that. And perhaps still is being affected by that. And so this is just something important to become aware of. Because, nowadays, we're talking about mental health a lot more, how important it is. But this is kind of more of a recent discussion over the past 30-ish years. And in my lifetime, I'm only 25, but I've watched this discussion really blossom in the past 10 years. When I was in middle school, for instance, there was not a lot of talk about mental health and meditation and these things, at least where I lived. Now, if I were to go back to where I grew up, people are talking about it. So it's good that we're opening up this conversation, this awareness that the body, the physical chemistry of the body follows suit of the mind. And this is why it's so important to really look at the thoughts that you're feeding yourself or ingesting, whether it's unconscious or subconscious. And just staying aware that it will affect your whole being. It will therefore affect your wholeness. He says, if you're ruled by your emotions, you can have no sense of harmony inside of you. Ruled by my emotions. Another way to say that is if I'm ruled by my thoughts. Just because I think a thought doesn't mean it's true. Dr. Joe Dispenza mentions this a lot within his work. How many times do we think a thought and we just automatically subscribe to it and assume that it's true? It's not always the case. And if we are in that frequency of so attached to our thoughts that we think we are them, we think they all must be true, then we are ruled by our emotions, our energy and motion, and therefore there can be no harmony since thoughts are, so random. Half the reason we think the way we do is because of the way society's programmed us. A lot of the thoughts that do surface in the mind are completely out of our control in the sense that I can't control what my neighbor says to me or what Stacy from middle school said to me. If Stacy said she didn't like my hair and I still allow that thought to surface in my head and control me, then yes, it will cause disharmony and dis-ease in the body. And so once again, because I as an individual am not capable of controlling society and how it thinks and how it acts towards me, I must start to become aware that just because these thoughts surface in my head, just because these emotions come at me and come up in me, does not necessarily mean they're true. And I, of my own free will, have the choice to align with them or not. I have the choice to protect my peace and stay in harmony or allow these forces and emotions to bother me and therefore knock me out of a homeostasis. And I will just add, I just said I don't have the power to control the external reality. I didn't mean that, but that's a rabbit hole for another time. You do have the power to control your reality with your thoughts though, and actually choosing what to align with. Once again, that's a whole nother rabbit hole for a different time because I could talk about that for ages. All of this to say, questioning your thoughts when they come into your emotional sphere and asking yourself, do I want to adopt that thought, make it true and believe it, and asking yourself with the awareness that if you say yes, it will contribute to the harmony or disharmony within your being. Because your emotional state influences your biological health. He says here that if you're stressed emotionally, your body will suffer. Yep, that's very true. As someone who used to be diagnosed with chronic stress, I can firsthand vet that stress most definitely will cause your body to suffer. I'm now very thankful that I don't have chronic stress, but when I did, it was very evident within my physical body. And once again, this is something important. For instance, if you'd asked any of my friends back then, or people who know me, oh, does Haley look healthy? Yeah, she's fine. I was not fine. And so just because someone looks fine or has a smile on their face doesn't necessarily mean that they're showcasing all of their emotions. It's easy to hide some of this stress, even if it is being manifested through the body. For instance, the way my chronic stress was manifesting was through PCOS. You're not a doctor, you can't check if there's cysts on my ovaries, things like this. Certain illnesses can be hidden, nonetheless, they're still there. So yes, the body will suffer, and it will suffer in accord to how much stress is within the mind. Emotional problems are the greatest cause of illness on our planet. That is a weighty sentence. And it's true. Because once again, emotional problems of the mind, cause the body to be knocked out of harmony. When my body's knocked out of harmony and I'm running around like a little stressed out nutcase, I have cysts on my ovaries, I have chronic stress, I can't sit still because I'm so anxious. Now every single action I take as I move throughout the world is going to hold that frequency. Every time I interact with someone, I'm going to leave them a little more anxious than they were before they met me. And so this cascades to create an ill planet with whatever I interact with. And then not only am I doing this, so are you who's watching this. So is your neighbor, so is your mother, so is your sister, so is your best friend. So as silly as it may sound, truly the individual has so much power to either create harmony in the world or to create disharmony in the world and to cause illness on the planet. For instance, right now, I'm not in that sense of stress for the most part. I feel relaxed when I open my eyes. I do my best to move into the world in a way that is loving, and therefore I try my best to leave everyone I meet with a sense of peacefulness. That peacefulness has a butterfly effect and eventually ripples out into the world. So I think really just emphasizing that emotional problems or lack of emotional problems, state of stress, has so much to do with how you can affect not only those around you, but the entire world. And something fun here that I thought of as I read this was, okay, so I understand the butterfly effect. What could I do that's maybe even really simple that could affect someone else's day so that they could then affect someone else's day, so that the people they affect can affect. What could I do to start that little spark of joy? Example being, when I get coffee tomorrow morning, I can really look her in the eyes and say, thank you. This is like the best coffee I've ever had. And obviously I want to mean it. I don't want to just randomly do acts of goodness that are not actually from here. But what can I actually do from a sense of presence and heart-centeredness that will inevitably ripple out into the collective? Maybe it's buying the person in line behind me coffee. Maybe it's going out of my way to open the door for the lady who has like 2 babies and can't open the door herself and asking if she needs help carrying things to her car. I don't know. But anything can create the ripple effect, good or bad. So how can I create a ripple effect within my community? Could be a fun little game to play. And I'm going to leave you guys with this last thought. There will be a part 2 to this shadow state of conflict, because I always just have so much to say within the shadow state videos. But I'm going to leave us off here. And he says that the 36th shadow, which we will get to in the future, is the programming partner to this 6th gene key. Programming partners are keys that go together and complement each other, bounce off of each other energetically. And he talks about how the 36th shadow conditions you to be nervous when you feel uncertain or insecure. And it's this nervousness that forms the background frequency of our whole planet. Okay, so what is nervousness? And how does it manifest? Nervousness is this kind of frenetic, anxious, contemplative, extremely analytical energy that can't seem to sit still. It manifests in the body as kind of an itching or a ticking, whether it's like always, you know people who are always moving, and you can just sense the anxiety and the nervousness leaking off of them. It's this inability to sit still and this not feeling of centeredness. Another way that I thought of that this manifests throughout the collective is people chronically checking their phones. What happened to just sitting in public and being okay with people watching or looking up? You'll notice if you go anywhere, whether it's on a bus, a waiting room, waiting in line for a restaurant, at the nail salon, people are just always on their phones. Very rarely will you see someone just completely chilling, looking around, feeling centered. And Richard Rudd said it's this nervousness that forms the background frequency of our entire planet, and you can see it everywhere. Being still, being silent has started to make the collective uncomfortable. And he talks about how it's this nervousness, this inability to sit still, that starts to fuel defensiveness, frenetic energy, and defensiveness feeds nervousness, and nervousness feeds defensiveness. And defensiveness is the ground for conflict, right? So in reading that section, I thought, once again, a fun little game that I like to play and that I invite you to play with me is next time I'm in public and I feel that nervous tick or itch to reach for my phone, let me actually put that back and see if I can hold the frequency of peace, of observance, of presence, of centeredness. Let me see if I can start to chip away at this background of nervousness that the world currently holds. And also, I would love to hear other ways that you who's watching can think of to chip away at this nervousness, perhaps other ways that it manifests within the human body or the collective, and other fun games and ways to try and hold centeredness. So if you think of anything, drop a comment below. That is all for today, and tune in to the next video so that I can go over the rest of this shadow state and get into the repressive nature of over-attentiveness and the reactive nature of tactlessness. Aloha. Hey guys, thanks again for tuning in with me for this Gene Keys episode. I also just wanted to come on here and start promoting my one-to-one coaching that I offer to women and girls ages 16 to 35. If you've followed me on Instagram for a while, you might be a little bit familiar with my story. I was a model in New York City for 5 years, and in that time frame, I did quite some damage. I developed a really severe eating disorder, body dysmorphia, chronic anxiety. Oh my gosh, I couldn't even go out to dinner without thinking about how much calories, how much I'd have to overwork out in order to compensate for what I was eating. All of those issues led to quite a depression and turned into PCOS, and I also lost my menstrual cycle for over 5 years. All of this amalgamation of issues led me to soon realize that something needed to change. I went through much work. Many people helped me to get to where I am now, and I'm so thrilled to say I'm living such a more abundant life, and I don't feel zapped and drained and fear of judgment anymore like I used to. I would love to offer what I've learned through my own embodied experience, the meditative techniques that have gravitated toward me, and the own verified games that I've made up and curated to help you walk home to more of you and who you really are, so that all of these things can stop draining your energy. You know, all the constant comparison to others and to your people on Instagram, all the over-analysis about working out and what you're eating or what you look like. All of these things are not what life's about, as cheesy as it sounds. And I would love to help you come into more unity with you if you struggle with any of these things and you're a woman or girl between the ages of 16 and 35. So feel free to reach out to me if one-on-one coaching sounds resonant. You can feel free to DM me through Instagram or contact me via email, both of which will be left below in the description box. So much love and aloha to you guys, and I'll see you all in the next video.